Okay, shalom everyone. So today we'll continue with the situations about morning washing. And so we call it morning washing because that's the normal way of the world. And I think we talked a while ago about how their custom was to go to sleep after they all went to the outhouse, and everybody would go to sleep and not wake up in the middle of the night. But of course, life happens, and there's babies too who wake up, and there's something that I didn't find here that I'll explain a little bit more. And so the main situation he talks about in this specific paragraph is about parents who wake up in the middle of the night, whether it's to cover their children or give them a pacifier, or to nurse them or to change their diaper, all of the above, in principle, need not wash their hands because covering a child with putting a pacifier in their mouth does not require touching the child's mouth or any other bodily orifice. However, if one wakes up to prepare food for the child, and we'll talk about also touching food with unclean hands in general, for the child or change that child's diaper, it is proper to wash one's hands prior to that in order not to touch food or one of the child's bodily orifices with unwashed hands. Likewise, it is proper that a woman wakes up in the middle of the night to nurse her child, wash her hands before starting. However, if it is very difficult for her to go wash her hands, she may rely on the lenient opinions that do not obligate one who wakens in the middle of the night to wash his or her hands. And also see Halacha 4, which we talked about, mentions that some of the opinions say that nowadays there is no Ruach Ra at all. So this evil spirit, which we consider maybe as germs, doesn't exist. But of course, a woman and her child and her baby aren't affected by that because they're always close, and I think that that's what he means here. In any case, according to all opinions, no bracha is recited on washing performed in the middle of the night because the Chachamim instituted the bracha only for the morning washing, which prepares us for the prayer and for the new day. And so the situation that I was going to talk about, which is not here, is about somebody who wakes up for guard duty. And the Chachamim don't really discuss it. In all my searches in Google, there's only one answer from the Atar Yeshiva, which is actually Rabbi Melamed's father, who founded that yeshiva in Beit El. And so he talks about that if a person is knowing for sure that during the 4 hours of guard duty, they'll probably eat or want to learn Torah or something like that, then it is proper to wash their hands even with a bracha because of that, and also Birkat Torah if they're planning on learning Torah. I don't know people who can concentrate on guard duty and learn Torah at the same time, but I guess some people do. So washing the hands for that is appropriate. But if it's just temporary, meaning you heard a noise and you woke up and you search the living room and there's nothing there and you go back to sleep, there's no reason to wash their hands for that. And so the chatchila is proper that a person who wakes up in the middle of the night to drink, wash his hands 3 times before reciting shehakol because of the cleanliness for the blessing. Similarly, it is proper that one who wakes up in the middle of the night to relieve himself, wash his hands 3 times so that he can touch his bodily orifices without concern. After relieving himself, he must wash his hands so that he may recite Sher Tzar, and that's why he's going to give a compromise, which makes a lot of sense. If he wishes, he may refrain from washing his hands prior to going to the bathroom in the middle of the night because you're going to rely on the fact that you're going to wash your hands after the bathroom to say Asher Yatzar. And so and that's why he suggests that compromise, which makes a lot of sense, to just wash our hands 3 times after we go to the bathroom. And even though most Ashkenazim don't wash their hands 3 times after number one, I think that in this case, especially since you are waking up in the middle of the night, it makes sense to, again, just do one washing, but after going to the bathroom, not before. And so to conclude this idea about the Ruach Ra'ah, he talks about touching food um, without clean hands. So we learned in Halacha 3 that because of the Ruach Ra'ah rests upon one's hands, in the morning one must not touch food or drink before washing his hands. Regarding a Jew who touched items of food without washing his hands, the ruling is as follows. If it is a dry food like fruit that can be washed, he should rinse it under water 3 times, just as the washing of each hand 3 times purifies them, so will the washing purify the fruit. And that's also why we do the washing of the hands for urchatz, before they eat the karpas on Seder night, because we were touching food that has gotten fluid over it. However, if you mistakenly touch drinks or food that will become ruined when washed, although there are those who are stringent to dispose of them for fear of the ruach ra is upon them, according to most poskim, even those foods that cannot be washed are permitted to be eaten, because bal tashchit, the prohibition of throwing away food, is from the Torah. It's in Parshat Ki Tetzeh, actually in the context of war, that if you come to a city and you put a siege on it, you're not allowed to cut down a fruit tree. And so the rabbis learned from that we're not allowed to waste food at all unless it's already turning uh, or other reasons, like if it fell on the floor or something like that, you're allowed to throw it out. But when it's just a question about I touched it with unwashed hands, which is rabbinical because of this ruach ra'ah, or throwing the food out, obviously the biblical prohibition overrides the rabbinical prohibition, and so that's why most poskim say that food should be eaten and not thrown out. There are 2 reasons for this. First, because according to the majority of poskim, the ruach ra in one's hands does not have the ability to render food unfit for eating. Because if it was, it would have been mentioned in the Mishnah of Taharot, where it talks about touching food that was contaminated by a dead, one of the 8 shratzim, that one of the 8 quality things that die on food. Although, so this is just to say that Ruach Ra is not as that kind of stringent. Although regarding an alcoholic beverage such as liquor, there are poskim that are more stringent. In any case, it is agreed upon among most poskim that all other foods do not become invalidated by touch of unwashed hands. And the second reason, furthermore, there are those who maintain that the Ruach Ra has been nullified from this world, therefore one should not discard or waste foods that were touched by unwashed hands. Similarly, it is permissible to buy bread or other food that is sitting in a store shelf, even though there is concern that it was touched by Jews who did not wash their hands in the morning. This is because, as we have already learned, according to most poskim, food is not invalidated by a touch of unwashed hands. So that's almost the conclusion of this chapter. The last part is about minors, and I think that we'll just do that tomorrow. And so I will stop the recording.